Hello, friends. I am trying this on YouTube Live for the first time. I'm getting ready to record season 2, episode 57 for the PrisonCare Podcast. And I decided to try doing this while also YouTube living. So if you are here for the live, yay, thank you. It's very nice to have somebody to be talking to instead of just a microphone that I'm pretending is a person. And if you're watching the replay later, that is fabulous too. Please give me feedback on whether this is a cool thing. I have only done a very little bit with video for prison care so far, but it's something that we want to do more of in the future. I don't have an ideal setup. I'm in my little garage office, and there's a blower right overhead that's going to cut on and off, and there's just nothing I can do about that. But hey, it's real, if nothing else, right? Keeping it real at PrisonCare. So I'm pulling up a script. I have today's episode scripted. I've been doing more of that lately because the last several episodes have been very personal. We've been sharing we're walking through right now. We've been sharing in real time about what my son Jay, who is incarcerated and who is transitional process transfer from one facility to another after a rules violation. He punched the window in a door and got a write-up for destruction of property, and then was on suicide watch for 12 hours after that, and then was transferred out to a different facility, but it's not a permanent placement. He is in temporary housing there until they figure out where he fits. And it's been really complicated, and it's a huge learning curve for me. This is not something that we've walked through before. We are 5 years into the experience as a mother and a child where the child is incarcerated, and both of them knew nothing about how prison worked before this began. But there are a lot of things that I've kind of gotten the hang of, kind of figured out how to do phone calls and how to get money on his books for commissary and how to do counseling over the phone because there's no counseling available. So if you followed our journey at all, you know that Jay suffers from mental illness and that he is trying incredibly hard to turn his life around. And I'm trying to support that effort. And he is not alone. There are a lot of people like him who are serving prison sentences and who are really, really trying to do the right thing. They're trying to learn coping strategies for things that have been triggers and problems for them in the past. They are trying to become pro-socially involved in the communities within their prisons. And prison care is all about equipping compassionate people to support prison culture from the outside in an attempt to care for the people on the inside. And please remember, that's caring for everyone on the inside. Doesn't matter which uniform you're wearing. The challenges facing prison residents because of the toxic nature of prison culture are also challenges faced by prison staff, correctional officers in particular, but staffers of other kinds like case managers and medical personnel, and even administrators. It's not okay what the U.S. prison system is doing to the people who are in each of these prison neighborhoods. And it doesn't matter which uniform they're wearing. Okay, so that's my little intro and my trying to get myself comfortable. I just realized that I failed to silence my phone, so I'm just going to grab that. And yes, now you know I'm on my little exercise ball chair that's not rolling very cooperatively. So, hey, we'll get it together. This is an adventure, right? Okay, deep breath in. Thank you for caring. And let's see if we can record an episode while live streaming. Pull my script up here. And here we go. Hello, friends. I am glad you decided to listen today. I said last week that we would get back to a topic this week, and we will, kind of, sort of. I've gotten feedback from a number of you that's sharing in real time what is happening with Jay and some of his friends during this rough stretch in his prison sentence is actually teaching you a lot. So I've decided the topic for now needs to remain focused on what Jay, his friends, his family, and the facilities in which he's living are dealing with in light of a rules violation and everyone's responses to it. This is a real topic that I would have planned into the content calendar for the Prison Care Podcast if I had ever lived through this before. But this is my first rodeo. It's my first experience with what a rules violation does. And I'm bringing you all along with me as I try to navigate it while allowing the prison care mission to guide me. Prison care is non-partisan. First, last, always. I am not on the side of the prisoner. I'm not all fury at the staffers who imprison him, even though I gave birth to that prisoner and I love him fiercely. I am on the side of love, a love that seeks holistic health and life for all individuals, simply because they are individual humans, each one worthy of a meaningful life and relationships. I am all fury at the assumptions and the habits and the bureaucracy and the petty agendas that stress and chip away at the well-being of everyone living and working in this prison system. Now, before anyone hears some unrealistic flower child sentiment in that statement, please remember where I am right now, what I am walking through. My lived experience in this moment gives me the right to speak with absolute authority. If I'm guided by Prison Care's mission, which is to support positive prison culture from the outside, because everyone on the inside matters, then this week, y'all, I am walking the talk. I am living in the reality of the complex emotions, the fear, the resentment, the frustration, and the grief. So let me be the guinea pig, and you guys be the lab assistants who take notes on this experiment. I'll do what I can to allow you to observe what it looks like when real people with real prison sentences and real mental illness walk through that sentence with people on the outside who love them and are trying to help, all while choosing to believe that every person on the inside of the razor wire fence matters. So nobody can just be written off as worthless. I volunteer as tribute. Go District 12. I can't speak for Jay as to this experiment, okay? His lived experience is separate from mine, and it's entirely unique. He believes in the mission of prison care. I mean, he co-founded the organization with me, right? But the burdens on him, the stresses, and the limitations placed on him by his brain chemistry make it challenging in a different way. And part of what I'm learning is from his journey. See, I can learn from my own experiences that each road bump can indeed be framed within the prison care paradigm. I can see the nuance and the complexity for staff, even when my heart is bleeding for my kid who has a DOC number, right? Because I am on the outside. That's the population I represent. I can get a break from all of it. People on the inside cannot. Don't get me wrong. It's not like this stuff is not on my mind 24/7. I mean, ask my husband Fred if I'm often distracted when we're eating together or watching TV or driving to church. But see, there's the thing. I get to eat with the people I've chosen. I get to watch TV sitting on the couch next to Fred. I get to drive to church. I get to see all my people there. That is a break from all of it. That's the part that people inside the walls don't get, even when they need it more than I do. A few specific examples of what I'm talking about. Okay, physical touch is hugely healing for many people when they are in deep distress. I mean, this is why we hug people or at least take their hand as we go through the receiving line at a funeral. It's why we cry on each other's shoulders. So physical touch inside a prison is not an acceptable thing. It is immediate contraband, or it's the beginning of an altercation, or it's proof of a sexual relationship that's a rules violation. No touching. And among staff, it's a sign of weakness. It looks unprofessional. Crosses boundaries if there are residents involved. Physical touch. They don't get it, even if they need it. Quiet time in a comforting space. Time to attend to yourself is a go-to for most of us, right? I spent much of yesterday afternoon on the squishy love seat in my living room, curled around a throw pillow that I particularly like, breathing in the scent of calming lavender and patchouli, and dealing with nobody for a couple of hours. The residents in a prison can never fully get away from people. Oh, and there is no upholstered furniture. There's nothing but concrete and metal and the smells of people. For staff, maybe there's an upholstered office chair, sure, but there's not even a moment of dealing with no one, not a moment of attending to self. Not even a moment, because a correctional officer who stops focusing on the people around them is a CO who just might die at work today. Always vigilant is the only way to do this job. How about sleep? Sleep is a go-to for me when I become overwhelmed with stress. I crashed during a show on TV last night at 8:30, and I woke up several times during the night. Ugh. But I always managed to drift back off. And when I actually got up this morning, it was an hour after my usual 6 a.m. wake up. Jay described his night during a phone call a couple of days ago. So he is currently housed in a 3-tier open pod. So that means cells surrounding an open common area, 3 stories high. So think like a hotel convention center atrium, right? Only really, really ugly. And there are no doors on the cells. There's just bars. This is an old prison. So you can't shut the door for even a little sound muffling. While Jay lay on his metal bunk with a 1.5-inch foam pad, trying to sleep to get a few hours break from the anxiety, there was another inmate somewhere in that echoing space. And he screamed, "Help!" over and over and over. And this guy would then stop screaming help for a couple of minutes, just long enough for Jay to start thinking, oh my gosh, he's dead. What happened? And then that same voice would echo through the space, moaning with satisfaction, calling out, yeah, that's right, baby, that's right. A few minutes of silence, and then the screaming for help would start again. That was his night. For correctional officers, sleep deprivation is simply the name of the game. They work long hours in short-staffed facilities because there is a nationwide staffing crisis in prisons in the U.S. They have mandatory holdovers for an extra 2 to 8 hours on the regular. They often have a 1-hour commute home because prisons are typically built in the middle of nowhere. The prison must be staffed 24 hours a day, so they are often adjusting to a different shift than the one that they most often work. Their circadian rhythms simply don't exist anymore. Let's talk food and stress. So I've been trying to watch what I eat over the last couple of months. I've been trying to cook more, use whole foods instead of processed shortcuts, limit sugar, all because I have noticed that the stress of the last few years is taking a toll on my body. And I wonder if maybe I can improve my joint pain levels with an anti-inflammatory approach to feeding myself. Eating wisely is a universally respected component of stress management, right? Jay eats what he's given in the chow hall. If he had food in his box that he had bought from commissary, it would all be highly, highly processed because, how else is it going to stay edible for months without refrigeration? Much of it is very high in sugar. But since Jay is in his 3rd week of abnormal housing in the wake of the rules violation, he has no box to pull food from. NCOs, they're forever at the mercy of whatever food they can throw together. They eat from the prison kitchen or from vending machines in a staff lounge. Bringing food in is highly complicated due to concerns about contraband. And living with a sleep schedule that is off does weird things to your metabolism and your hunger. And people are often tempted to just rely on sugar and caffeine to manage their work shift. It goes on. And I think by now you get the idea. So my primary point is this. I don't get to choose for anybody but myself. Right now, Jay is trying to still believe that everyone on the inside matters, but he is pretty overwhelmed with simply trying to take care of himself enough to stay alive. And the mission of Prison Care, our goal is to raise awareness and equip people like me on the outside to support a more positive, less toxic culture on the inside. Any prison inmates or staff who catch hold of the vision and who want to participate in carrying out the mission are so very welcome. But they're not the ones supposed to bear this burden. We are. We are. It's our job. It's our job as a society that requires the existence and use of prisons to support them, to care about them, to remember their needs behind the walls. So perhaps by bringing you along on my personal journey in something like real time, maybe it will raise your awareness. I mean, heck, I'm learning stuff I never knew about prison culture, and I've had a loved one on the inside for 5 years. So perhaps I will equip you to remember, to care, and to support the people inside prisons, no matter which uniforms they wear. All right, where are we now on July 17th, 2023? I speak to Jay every day for a 10-minute phone call, either once or twice each day, depending on whether or not he can get to the front of the line for a second time. He says there are very long lines for the phones. Pardon me, a little sleep deprivation going on for me too. I slept a zillion hours last night, but I had a lot of really crazy dreams. We pay for all the phone calls, of course, with a prepaid phone account that I put money on monthly that allows him to call my number. If he wants to call other people, he has to purchase phone time through a commissary. Because he's in temporary housing, that's hard to get, so he's calling only me for the prison. It's part of why he is so eager for JPay emails from other people. And thank you to the many folks who have been sending him encouragement. His mom is the only voice on the other end of the phone right now. He has been in a 2-man cell in a very old building. Most of the cells on this 3-tier pod are single cells, but one row is doubles. And lucky him, he's in one of those. He says that he could stand in the middle of the cell, reach out, and touch both walls simultaneously. The metal toilet sink combo, it's 18 inches from the lower bunk. And there is no door, just a wall of bars looking out onto the common area. He has had to share that space with a new cellie every other day so far. It's a lot of getting used to your roomie, right? They can't have food in their cells, so even if he had been able to order commissary food at this point, he wouldn't be allowed. There is a problem with roaches and rats in this facility due to its age, I guess. Just going to leave that there because that is part of what keeps waking me up in the middle of the night, honestly. When I'm trying to hide from my anxiety and sleep, I dream about him dealing with that problem. So we'll leave it there. Staff are professional from what he has observed so far. He says there is a difference in the vibe off of staffers, different from the private prison where he was before. He can't exactly articulate it, but he says it's as if they seem more comfortable in their role, like they're doing their job rather than trying to prove that they're doing things right. That might not be a perfect way of saying it. But he told me that he always felt before like staff around him felt as if they were one step away from the chopping block with the administration. That's where he was housed before, right? Okay, and that here in this state facility, there seems to be less of that tension. He grabbed my coffee, which I left behind me. Awkward moment here. Okay. So in a strange plot twist, 3 days ago, a bus rolled up from his former facility, and the friend with whom he had had the argument that started this whole mess got off the bus. Yep. That guy got written up for fighting with Jay and was then shipped out to the same facility where Jay is now. And that is supposed to be a no-no. If two guys fight, they are to be forever kept separate so that they don't fight again and bring more people into it. Jay asked around, and it appears that there never was any serious concern at the previous prison about the two of them. Staff apparently knew that there was no real fight that took place, and these two are not a danger if they're housed in the same facility, which raises further questions as to why any of this happened in the first place, and certainly why it was ruled that both guys had to be shipped out entirely. So Jay let his friend know that he was open to talk, and they had a good heart-to-heart. The friend expressed deep sorrow at all that had happened because of his short fuse and the argument that had started it all. They're both hoping for good things for each other, even though they will probably never be close again like they once were. Jay ran into another old friend who had transferred out of the other prison some time ago. He spent time in one other prison, but was now again in temporary housing, awaiting placement in a prison with better mental health services. Like Jay, he has some significant needs that could not be met where he was. In fact, he was tested by gang members immediately after his arrival at the second prison, and the level of threat was such that he did what is called checking in. So when a resident is heavily threatened by someone, usually gangs, they're often given 3 choices: join with us and do whatever we tell you to do, submit to sexual assault, or agree to let us jump you, and if you survive the beating, we'll leave you alone from then on. Sometimes this is called a heart check. What some people do in the face of this threat is check in to solitary or administrative segregation. If an inmate refuses to leave their cell when they're ordered to by an officer, like at count time, when they're told to come and stand beside the door, if they refuse, they're automatically sent to the hole for refusing to comply. And when they're placed in solitary confinement, they are then asked why they refused to comply. Now, this is the point in the story where you would think that they would say, because I wasn't willing to work for a gang, I wasn't willing to be raped, and I wasn't willing to be beaten, right? But they don't say that, because that would be snitching. So they look the officer in the eye and they say, I have to be moved. I can't live there. You have to move me. And no matter how many times they're asked why they can't live there, they just keep answering, you have to move me. Staff know why. They also know why the inmate won't give them a straight answer. You know, snitches get stitches is not a made up for TV thing. It's real. The gangs have a lot of reach, much more reach than anyone would like for them to. If you tell who threatened you, there will be retaliation. So the game is played, and eventually the staff either move you to new housing or they keep you in ad-seg for refusal to cooperate, or they ship you out to another facility if that's in the best interest of their facility overall. This is a no-win for everyone. Staff hate it because they understand all of the complexity, but they still have to jump through the hoops of protocol. The protocol isn't working for anyone, but they have to follow it anyway. The resident who checked in hates it because ad-seg is a nightmare way of life, and they have no idea how long they will be there. In the case of Jay's friend, his check-in lasted 6 weeks before he was transferred out. 6 weeks. And I'm told that 6 weeks is nothing. The guy got off easy. There are people in ad-seg for years, all in the wake of what started as a check-in to preserve their own safety. Do I really need to remind anyone that the system is fundamentally broken at this point? Jay met with a sergeant yesterday to discuss his situation, to verify his charges, to learn about where he would be going and when. The sergeant was kind, knowledgeable, helpful. He pulled up info on the computer and confirmed that destruction of property is Jay's only charge. He saw proof of his work in the dog program, even some of the pro-social volunteer choices he's made in the past that were significant enough to get a positive note made in his file by a staffer somewhere. And then came the bad news. While Jay's psych code has indeed been moved up to 4, he is still showing as available to any medium security prison in the state, with the exception of the one that he just came from. While there are only 4 prisons with mental health services sufficient to handle an inmate with a P4 psych code who's at a medium or higher level of custody, he is showing as available on the computer to a bunch of prisons with little to no mental health services at all. He called me after that meeting, and he was in a panic. He's hanging on by a thread as it is. And the thought of having survived that long suicide watch and limping through this temporary housing situation, just breath by breath, just to be shipped out to some place with no help for him at all, is terrifying. The sergeant agreed that this was an incorrect setting on his file, that he should only be available to move to a prison with more significant mental health services, but he said he couldn't fix it himself, would talk to someone with more authority. I did what I could find to do. I left a long voicemail for the case management department and explained in detail Jay's situation. I also left a long voicemail at the State Department of Corrections Constituent Services Helpline, and I followed up with an email to their office as well, but who knows. I did receive an email in return from the state just an hour or so ago, and I was essentially politely told that nobody gets to make any suggestions as to what facility someone is sent to, and that all of the facilities have mental health services, so I don't need to worry about it. So I politely wrote back and said, I'm confused by your email because when I look at the state's own descriptions of each facility, and then I copied and pasted quotes, these are the 3 that state that they have active specific levels for serious or acute mental illness. And he very quickly and politely responded that yes, those are special residential inpatient treatment for people with things like schizophrenia or whatever, but that all of the other facilities have mental health services, and that Jay will be placed somewhere that will work for him. Yeah, it wasn't very reassuring. It's all we know right now, so we're in a holding pattern. One final thought as I wrap up this episode. If you had a coworker going through a scenario that looked something like this, major family stress at home, like a divorce looming, something like that, okay? Plus housing issues, so they're having to crash on a friend's couch while they're in between situations. Plus the recent loss of a best friend. Plus chronic mental illness currently showing active symptoms. Wouldn't you ask if they had anyone to talk to, like a counselor, a therapist? Wouldn't you immediately think that that would probably be a help to them in making good choices rather than destructive ones? This is not rocket science, right? We know that talking through problems with someone who has some wisdom, some training, and helping guide people through hard patches, it's helpful. There are free suicide hotlines in this country because we know that talking to someone can mean the difference between death and life for a person undergoing a mental health crisis. The absence of talk therapy in prison is inexcusable. If I swooped in from above with a magic fairy wand to fix all that is toxic in the prison system in the United States, one of the first things I would sprinkle fairy dust on is mental health services. Listen to why. I would magically provide a huge staff of counselors. They wouldn't even have to be psychologists. We can make great use of counselors with all degrees of training and experience. And they would be available to talk to any correctional officers or residents who wanted to try talk therapy. There would be a ton of people inside the prison wearing both kinds of uniforms, I'm sure, who would scoff at the offer. Ha! You know what? That's okay. We'll sprinkle fairy dust on them later and find other ways to help them. But for those who are wise enough to know that talking to someone on a regular basis when they're going through a crisis actually could help, get them an appointment. Give them a wise and caring ear. Give them a sounding board to test their choices with. This is so obvious that it hurt my fingers to type the words when I was typing up the script. Why is this not a financial priority for prison budgets? Start with the folks who are willing to try to get healthy. Figure out what to do with the knuckleheads who don't want to change their lives later. Do something simple to facilitate rehabilitation, which, by the way, just a reminder, the definition of rehabilitation is the restoring to health of something that is injured or ill or has been imprisoned. So do something simple to facilitate rehabilitation just by giving those people access to regular talk therapy. That's what Jay would gladly trade like most anything he has for. And he's not the only one. There are so many people inside prison cells who are determined to change, to grow, and to become whole. And there are so many prison staff who don't want to descend into bitterness and cynicism and depression and anger and fear. Many correctional officers go into this field thinking that they're going to be able to make a positive difference in the world by serving society in this role. Those people need to have access, easy access to professional counseling. Many of them want it. And those who don't want it just might come around if they saw their colleagues begin to thrive where they had once simply survived. Does this sound important to you? Man, I hope so. To learn more, please visit PrisonCare.org. Consider getting involved. Host a house party to raise awareness among wise and compassionate people in your life who maybe know next to nothing about the needs of prison neighborhoods. Invite me over virtually or in person. Give to support our work. We're continuing to create mental wellness resources for incarcerated people. And sponsoring the creation of one of those PDFs is a great way to let your spare change make a difference in the life of somebody who is suffering. Most important, remember, don't allow the people behind the walls to be forgotten and invisible. Talk about it. Pray for it. Send out some encouragement in an email. We can do better. Thanks for caring, friends. And that's that. My first YouTube live with a few yawns. Sorry. That time of the afternoon, I should have drunk all the coffee before I started. I was afraid I would be like, a chipmunk if I drank the coffee before I started, because I tend to talk fast as it is. If this is helpful, if you like the lives, if you like the YouTubes, the video, whatever, let me know. We are trying to figure out the best way to raise awareness, and I need input from people like you who are already involved enough to be watching this and listening. So tell me, what are ways that you think we can be doing a good job of connecting with compassionate people who could help us support positive prison culture from the outside? Take care, friends.